Get some insights that will change your perspective on how we perceive information. And I'm very thankful that Marek made it to us that early on a Sunday morning. And I hope you're enjoying the talk. Please welcome Marek.
Thank you. Hi. Thanks, Anna. Good morning, everyone. I know that in Berlin, when you talk about sickness on Sunday morning, you probably won't be talking about information sickness, you'll be talking about other kinds of sickness. Also, I'm not used to doing this kind of presentation on the stage with cameras and other things and so on, so it's going to be super awkward, like very awkward, just bear that in mind. Normally, I'm kind of more nerdy, standing in front of the computer and changing my slides, hiding behind things and so on. Now I'm totally exposed in my shorts here. About information sickness, before we even start anything right now, think about this sickness as a motion sickness. So something that is disorienting you and is creating this sensation that is both physical and psychological, but also it's kind of, you feel kind of embarrassed in some way before we go any forward. So this is the sign for the next slide. If there's anybody there behind the slideshow. Let's get to the next one. Since we are at the Documentary Filmmakers Festival, I thought that would be very interesting to ask you the question, because I think there's a reason you make films, documentary films in particular, is that you probably believe in verification, evidence, data, investigation methods, veracity of information as a kind of the most important power that can change the world. And that's the kind of a next question after the question of the information. So next slide, please. We're just gonna do something that is very, very funny. You can show the next slide. When I was doing a talk a few months ago, you can show the next slide, please. We went for a drinks after the talk. And there are different kinds of people talking about different kinds of stuff, and the dude at some point takes the phone and he's like, I'm like, oh no, he's gonna show me his portfolio or something, whatever. And he's like, no, I'm gonna show you some pictures. And those are the pictures. Just look at them for a second. You have some men there wearing some kind of strange outfits. We can see the next picture and maybe the next one. And the question I was asking normally the audience when I do this talk, what do you think these pictures are? Because they are not what you may think they are. This archive, but Simon Mayer, who was the guy that I met at the drinks post talk, he went to the Stasi museum and archive, and he dived into the archive and start digging into the photographs. So the photographs you're looking at are from the birthday party of the head of the Stasi office at the time, probably in the 70s and 80s, early 80s. And they decided for fun, all the workers, you can show the slides backwards, maybe 1 and 2, so you can see them again, to do a costume party. And what these guys are wearing, they are wearing outfits of people that they were spying on. So you can see people spying on sport, and go back to this one, on church, and you can just go forward, sport fans, and show the next one. I don't know what the next one is. We can keep this one for a moment. So for me, that was very interesting to kind of see something that I've been seeing all the time in different places, where people who gather information about other people, about their behaviors, internally, they are extremely there's a pride. They're proud of the craft, the way they can do this job. Regardless of the fact that they may think it's not the right thing to do, technically speaking, they like what they do, and they would like to show it between themselves. You've seen that through different kind of investigations later on. In this archive, there were also things like this. Not only did the DDR, so the East Germany, was at the time the largest apparatus that survey citizens. Lots of money went into it and other things and so on. But they were so insecure that they would have people set up and photograph mailboxes and photograph people who send mail. Not only post was already surveyed and censored, but they still were kind of, not sure that they capture everything. You can show the next slide. And they were taking these pictures of people posting, mail. And the next slide. But then, not only that paranoia kind of expanded, and that started, taking pictures of themselves, spying on people in the field. So not only they can, spy on what's happening, but also they make sure that they spy on themselves, that they are spying, kind of thing. And show the next one. And the next one. And at the time, what was also happening, which I didn't know, and this conversation goes on, we're having another drink, because Simon investigated that topic quite deeply. There was this entire setup in East and West Germany where West Germans had a small squad that was allowed to go in East Germany and spy on what's happening in the East, and vice versa. The Easterners could go into the West and so on. But they were photographing each other. So this is the East Germany squad photographing the West Germany squad that is photographing them back. And show the next one. And it becomes kind of, very cinematic. And kind of fascinating, the aesthetics of it. You kind of looking at it as a still from a French noir kind of film. And then the next slide. So just park it for a moment, because I don't want to laugh at, neither it is funny, and nor it is irrelevant. That you have this massive apparatus that oppresses entire nation, but aesthetically it presents itself in a specific way. So, what is this idea of knowing about what's happening? That was the kind of a negative example. Let me show you the different one, the positive one. Can we show the next slide? In the UK in 1937, a movement was born, and it was called mass observation movement. Mass observation movement, or mass observation is what's called. It was run for a couple of decades, then collapsed, and then was kind of revived in 1981 and become part of the university in Essex, I think. And this idea in 1937 in the UK came from anthropologist, poet, documentary filmmaker, who I will show you later all the URLs and all the names and everything if you want to capture that, what I'm showing, because for some of these things may be new to you. What they were trying to understand was what the populace, what the people are thinking when the political change is happening, what's going on there. And they approached to this idea that we can learn something where we quantify things that normally are not quantified, would be to understand the society. And they had 500 volunteers who had diaries. We can show the next slide. And they were going to pubs, to dance floors, to community centers, and they would just make observations. They would just sit in the corner and write, this is how they dance. This is how they dance now in the context of what's happening politically or culturally or socially in the society. And this is the kind of a little diagram that they made to illustrate what the mass observation movement was, what was actually at stake when they were looking at quantifying the information. So I'm trying to build a narrative that for some time, and historically probably for thousands of years, there was always this idea that if we only could quantify something, we would have deeper understanding what's going on in the world. And the next slide, please. And the next. I think you had the time to read it. Josh Bagley, who is an American investigator, journalist, and a writer and filmmaker as well. He's been working with Laura Portret. He created this project made out of thousands of photographs. After 9/11, there was a special section created in the New York Police Department that should observe what's going on in places where nobody is looking. And the squad had cameras, and they were going around the city, and they were photographing all of different kinds of places. And these places are mostly either Muslim or Arabic. And they didn't collect much data. They just collect a little bit of data. Who owns the business and so on, etc. He's presenting part of these photographs in these different ways. Let's see the next time. Maybe I have some more photographs. I don't remember. No, go back, please. But the idea here was that they were trying to figure out something that may be useful in the future. They didn't know what they need to look for. They didn't know what to collect, so they collect whatever was available. So they had these cars going around and taking pictures. And only because Associated Press use the access to information powers, got these photographs. I'm just thinking about it for a second. And then, next slide, we have 2019 COVID, which sounds like a decade ago, and it wasn't that long ago. And of course, the state is in panic state and wants to know what's going on. Not only in terms of how is the illness spreading, the virus going around and so on, etc., but also how people behave. But it turns out that the state doesn't have enough information. And who does? Then Google comes out and other companies who are like denying for a long time that they collect any information. Turns out they have all the relevant information. And the Community Mobility Report was the first time that it was publicly kind of shown that every single Android device is being monitored. So they know how we move. And they can share it when it's necessary to solve this kind of big problem. And for us, that was kind of very important revelation that we don't need to talk about it as if, maybe, we don't know if they actually don't tell you if they do, but when the crisis hits, they come across and they have this information. So I show you the state, I show you the police, I show you people who are trying to understand things, and I show you the big tech. Let's go further and see the next thing. That sounds paranoid, doesn't it? And maybe it is. Next slide, please. So I thought that we will also talk about AI because everybody's talking about AI. And everybody's using AI, I'm sure you all do. And so I went on ChatGPT and I kind of was trying to figure out, okay, so how this accumulation of information on which these AI models are being trained would answer the question, what is information? And the first one, I mean, you can read it, I'm going to read it aloud, is kind of very basic. Of course, you know, the model that ChatGPT is using right now is very different than I used a year ago when I was doing that query. But it's very kind of technical. And let's see the next slide. Because for me, when you think about information and AI, there used to be two camps of AI. One was the symbolic camp that was claiming that you can only build AI if it is epistemological system, knowledge system. So you have to create a massive database of knowledge and then the computer going to process it and kind of behave like give you some intelligent output. And the other model was the model of connections. And the model of connections is what's winning right now. So you have to have critical mass of information and then you map it depending on connections between words, between signs, between whatever else. And it's a pattern generator. It's not an epistemological model. It is not the model that throws at you any knowledge. It just throws patterns at you that looks like it. But I'm just giving you this example because for nearly 200 years, California was an island in many of the cartographies. And the reason that California was an island, not because California was an island, is just because there was limitation to tools and position of the observer who was creating the map that created an impression that California was an island. It never was. It's just nobody ever went around and they connected dots because of connections. Connections are not about causality. So then I went to another, next slide, another chat kind of thing. And this is Brave. Brave is a browser that I would recommend you to use, but they also have little AI thing that you can ask different questions. And that was kind of interesting because the kind of definition here of information was more about quantifying information as useful, relevant in particular purpose and need. That was very interesting. So let's see the next slide. So then, how does it sound? I mean, those are the three examples. One is like from yesterday, the others are kind of old. And I don't want to mention the name of the woman or the man who drove his car into the park. They both follow GPS. GPS is a kind of the most reliable kind of geolocation system. She did something that may have totally different reasons for doing so. She went to pick up her friend from the station in Brussels, and a day and a half later ended up in Croatia following GPS. That's not normal. I think the most normal situation is that you're going to end up on some kind of weird road that is not a road anymore and so on because GPS told you so. But as yesterday I just read the article in The Guardian that is showing this case where people at the festival, heavy metal festival, were asked to stop wearing their smartwatches because they were sending, false collision alarms because they were dancing so heavily on the floor that the system thought there was a massive, public collision happening at the time. Let's see the next slide. I hope you're finding this at least intriguing so far. This is my definition. This is not AI. I'm not very smart. But one of the things I was thinking of, and you can find it also in many of the books, that when you think of information, we attach to information certain quantity and value that is related to truthfulness. But information doesn't have that. It's what we do with information may have that. But information doesn't depend on veracity. And that's kind of important to think when we're going to go to the second part of the talk. Let's see the next slide. And the next one, I have actually two pictures here. The first one is what have happened recently. We reached certain critical mass of when everything is everything, nothing is nothing, and it's very hard to believe in anything. This is the guy, Alan Lichtman, who was able to predict every single president of the United States for last, 35 years or so. And he completely failed for the first time, last year. And then let's see the next slide. What do you think this is? I mean, you see very characteristic arrows on the map. They're floating over a landscape that is the urban landscape. So all of you using different kinds of maps, you may be thinking, okay, this is airplanes because they're flying over, but it's like really a lot of airplanes flying around in a circle very close to each other. And they are representing something else. Those are actually boats, ships. We are in Shanghai a few years ago, and people who are monitoring AIS system, AIS or EIS in Germany, is a kind of a system that every boat of certain size have to carry on the boat. It's like you can follow them on marine traffic. Like every airplane has to carry AIS system, and you can monitor them on whatever, Flight 24, and so on. It's obligatory because it's necessary for this kind of large transportation methods to be visible to other methods. But ships don't go in towns. And people started observing that happening. So what is happening here is that somebody with enormous amount of resources, infrastructure, and so on, etc., is able to fake movement of ships. Why they do that? I mean, let's see the next slide. The slide's not. It didn't only happen in Shanghai. Shanghai is one of the biggest ports in the world, but in many other places, Shanghai is kind of in the middle there. There was about 15 of them. Many of them were happening around either, not necessarily like in Shanghai, in the middle of Shanghai, but around some kind of a specific architecture, like drilling platforms and so on, etc. But the idea was there to test if an entity of the I would say, military scale or state scale is able to fake entire AIS system so they can hide, because the ships are not there. The ships who are using this IAS are doing something that somebody doesn't want to see. And we've seen that also during the war with Russia, that they were playing with GPS systems and AI system and so on, to present to the public certain information that looks like this is what is happening. This is the extreme. Normally, this ship would be somewhere else, but not that extreme. You wouldn't be circling and so on. But I think somebody was just training the system and figuring out how to control it, and just to park the boat somewhere, just create these weird circles and so on, revealing to us researchers what's going on. Let's see the next slide. That's supposed to be actually like little animation, because you could capture them, how they come from the river and start circling and go back to the river and so on, etc. Let's go to the next one. So I want to talk about part of the information sickness for me is something that I'm trying to use this metaphor of ultra-processed information. And the reason I'm doing that is that we know all right now, I guess, I hope, what is the impact of ultra-processed food. And I'm making this metaphor because we're having the same problem right now with the way we consume information. A lot of information we consume is ultra-processed information, if you like it or not. Let's get to the next slide. And that leads to certain kinds of behaviors. And this is kind of controversial in a way what I'm going to say. So let's go to the next slide. There was a group of researchers that actually did a study on Norwegians for some reason. So this is what I'm saying. It has nothing to do with Norwegians or is against Norwegians or anything like that. It's just the study is about that. Because I was looking at the relationship between how much information is causing us to make rational decisions, how we engage with things, versus how much it creates certain kinds of emotions. And they focus on anger. And when they realize, we can see the next slide, that majority of Norwegians who move from being indifferent, neutral, uninterested, not sure, would act, would go out and protest because of anger. And then I was starting to think, okay, there's something interesting in anger. Let's look at the next slide. And there was there's a link between change and anger. And the next slide. And there was also this new study by Psychology Today that was looking at rethinking the anger. And I'm not sure what I think about it, to be honest, because anger normally is considered to be a very negative thing that happens to us, and we need therapy, we need help, we need management of anger, and so on, etc. But anger is also something that is causing us to act, and many documentary filmmakers know that feeling very well. You want to do something, you want to investigate something because it makes you angry. And there's nothing to be ashamed of, and so on. But this anger also can be misdirected, can be easily controlled in different kinds of ways. So it's very ambivalent feeling. And just I'm thinking about it, and I'm hoping you're going to be thinking about as well for a moment. And let's go to the next slide. Now we're going to do something totally different. So from kind of abstraction and weird theories I'm making here, let me give you a couple of examples of what's happening in the world if you investigate it. I run an organization called Tactical Tech, and we did 2 investigations I shortly tell you about because they create the backdrop to what I'm trying to get at, if you like. Before Cambridge Analytica, you've heard of Cambridge Analytica, I assume, came out because of Facebook scandal, we were already interviewing a lot of people who deal with information brokering, and they were telling us that there's an entire industry out there that is using people profiles for political gains, and they sell it as services. So the influence industry ended up, after a few years of work that we have done, going to different, fairs of specialists, talking to people that didn't want to, be named, and so on, etc. The database has right now almost 700 entities, businesses that are offering services to political parties and other entities like corporations that would help them, A, win elections or swing them, or B, influence the way society is talking about specific issues. So just imagine climate change and so on, etc. And let's move to the next one. The database is, you can explore it. We also did 30 country studies where we were looking at these companies against elections. So there's an election, we see which companies are coming into this country, we see what services they offer, we ask for very different documents, we work with a lot of researchers, and they show us, invoices and so on, etc., and we see this happening. We don't know what is the impact of it, because nobody's inside. It's a black box on the other end. We don't know if these methods of profiling and using advertisement or 254 other methods that we have mapped have any effect, but they sell it. And the entities are using it, and we see more and more confusion, we see more and more polarization, and we see more and more of these things that are happening because the information that we're getting is ultra-processed. It is creating this information sickness that I'm talking about. Let's move to the next one. The next one you will find, okay, AI is amplifying that. We can skip this one. Let's move to the next one. That's kind of obvious. AI is amplifying and accelerating a lot of things that are worrying. The other investigation we did was in 2017 with a Spanish artist, Joana Moll. So a lot of you were talking about that there is some data that you can get, but people were thinking, okay, this is like you have to use Tor, you have to go on a kind of dark internet and do some kind of, transaction using crypto and so on, etc. What we did, we went to the website called US Date, and that was accessible in Germany. It was saying that it is selling information on people that are on dating sites. We decided to buy 1 million profiles. The 1 million profiles turned out to be worth 153 euro, whatever that was. And we were thinking we're going to get some kind of CSV file with, some abstracted information and so on, etc. What we got, and what Joanna was working on, and the team at Tactical Tech, we got the CSV file, but with CSV, which is a kind of a nerdy acronym for table with information ordered in different way. We got people names, addresses, telephone numbers, emails, their preferences, often history of their conversations, all these kind of things. Not only that, but we also got the link to download a media file associated with the CSV file that had 5 million photographs, which we were not intending to buy. We didn't know we were buying it. We bought it. Then let's show the next slide. And then we did the investigation. You can find it online. I'm not going to go into detail, but there are two findings from this investigation. One was that this entire network of dating sites is owned practically by one company that owns another company that owns another few, and is a cascading model. And they denied the relationship. It was obvious online when we were researching after our investigation, and then they removed some of the connection, but you can still figure it out. That was one finding. That was interesting. That's kind of, you would say, so what? That's normal in the business world. But what is interesting is that they reuse the data. So if you put data in one dating site, your data is going to be in other dating sites. That is how they proliferate every and any new dating site to make it look attractive. And Joanna created this project where you can look at the actual profiles. It's all anonymized. The faces are being blurred. There's no way of searching through it. It's really protecting the people because we didn't want to double victimize people who are using dating sites, but we wanted to show how intimate is the data that is available for very little money to anyone who is willing to buy. And now you can imagine that this data can be also bought by influence industry, people who work for political parties and so on, etc., by hackers or whoever has 100 euro kind of thing. The other thing what we discovered was the business model, because the business model is very similar to other kind of businesses that are benefiting from you interacting with the service. So you put the information and you get something back. You get the date, you buy something or whatever that is that the service is offering. But these sites are also full of cookies and trackers and other things that they serve the service to the third parties who can observe what you're doing, and they can also do observation cross browsers, cross services, and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to talk about it because usually that sounds very kind of nerdy and boring. But the fact is that we found hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of trackers and other forms of tracking people using these services. And the big ones are obviously always Meta, Google, and so on. But out of these hundreds of them, we didn't know majority, like 90% we never heard of. There are some kind of entities that pay some money and collect data for some reasons. And that should be known to those who are using the services. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. And I'm going to do another jump. And let's see how you're going to react to this kind of messy processing of information that I'm throwing at you right now. We're going to play a video now. Let's do it.
Does it understand what it's doing in the sense that we do? It's easy to leap to false conclusions, as Professor Weizenbaum discovered when he created ELIZA. ELIZA is a computer program that anyone can converse with via the keyboard, and it'll reply on the screen. We've added human speech to make the conversation more clear.
Men are all alike.
In what way?
They're always bugging us about something or other.
Can you think of a specific example?
Well, my boyfriend made me come here.
Your boyfriend made you come here.
He says I'm depressed much of the time.
I'm sorry to hear that you're depressed.
It's true. I am unhappy.
Do you think coming here will help you not to be unhappy?
The computer's replies seem very understanding, but this program is merely triggered by certain phrases to come out with stock responses. Nevertheless, Weizenbaum's secretary fell under the spell of the machine.
And I asked her to my office and sat her down at the keyboard, and then she began to type. And of course, I looked over her shoulder to make sure that everything was operating properly. After 2 or 3 interchanges with the machine, she turned to me and she said, "Would you mind leaving the room, please?"
And yet she knew, as Weizenbaum did, that Eliza didn't understand a single word that was being typed into it.
You're like my father in some ways. You don't argue with me.
Why do you think I don't argue with you?
You're afraid of me.
Does it please you to think I'm afraid of you?
My father's afraid of everybody. My father's afraid of everybody.
I mean, you can hear that probably was produced by the BBC. This is the recollection of something. So Joseph Weizenbaum actually was an amazing scientist that spent most of the time in the US, one of the pioneers of AI. And this experiment he did as a kind of, an office experiment, completely changed his mind about where development of AI can lead. He was absolutely shocked that this kind of system, I mean, we are a slide ahead now, but that's okay. Let's look at this slide, you can look at it. Was that, as in this video, there's no intelligence in it. But it creates this very intimate situation through very little means. It's a very basic text. The voice that you're hearing is enactment for the sake of television. How it was actually happening, somebody was silently typing something into the screen and getting some answers. This entire system was built on a very old psychological method of therapy, where you repeat something to people that goes to therapy, etc. It's not even his invention, and so on. He just coded it in, and so on. And it was shocking for him that immediately the computer, or what's behind the computer, gained a personality that a person wanted to share a lot of intimate things that normally they wouldn't share with him or whoever else that they would trust. And if you look at the current AI, we are in the same situation. So let's go to the next slide. I was thinking, and that's not very original thinking, that we talk a lot about, high-end technology that's going to end up with some kind of mesmerizing mixture between hardware and software and so on, etc. But majority of us interact with technology, digital technology in particular, that is highly programmed and has a massive apparatus behind it through very simple interfaces. And the interface, since Google discover that all you need is not thousands of different choices, but practically you need one single box in which you can type something. And it's even better if you don't have to type anything complex, you can type anything and it's going to be interpreted for you, and then you're going to get the answer. And from Google, through SMS, through Twitter, through Reddit, through WhatsApp, whatever else you're using, is the same kind of thing. And AI offers you the same. Like the minimum effort of input and maximum satisfaction of output that you're getting. And I was thinking there's something fascinating there that, when you look at the different kinds of exhibitions about AI and other things, VR and AR and so on, etc., they are telling us a story of a technology that is mesmerizing, intriguing, and aesthetically pleasing and whatnot, with a lot of levels of depth. But by the end of the day, the technology that we're using is as simple as that. We just get the interface in our pocket, and this interface is as simple as that. We type much more than we ever did, and we get a lot of input. But this apparatus is not only about in and out. I don't know what this next slide is, actually. Let's see what the next slide is, and I will know what I'm talking about. Okay. Probably I'm going towards the end right now. I have 3 questions I wanted kind of to leave you with, and I'm kind of leaving myself with these 3 questions, is that one of the observations that I have had, that our obsession with the power of information, either because we are professional spies or want to survey nations and so on, etc., but also we want to know what's going on as individuals, because the interfaces we're using is leading to this infantilization of how we understand the world. And one of the reasons is that we mistake the pattern apparatus that we're using right now, specifically AI, for epistemological apparatus, for knowledge, if you like. The second question I wanted to leave you with, in the next slide, is I think there's a lot of discourse about the impact of synthetic media And you as a filmmakers and anybody who is interacting with information struggle with synthetic media, because synthetic media is media that are generated by some kind of a cooperation between individual and machine that is pretending to look like something real. So it's very hard to tell the story, you know, and the biggest manifestation of that would be if you remember the Valencia flood and all the stacking cars and so on, etc., and the online debate about it, that it was AI generated. So it's not only that synthetic media looks like reality, but now we look at reality and we suspect it may be generated by, it's completely, you know, that's the information sickness, is making it extremely confusing. But what I'm trying to say, that what we're not talking about is the ultra-processed information, not just synthetic media, that more and more we give the power to control information to big tech, that the only interest they have is to monetize the information. They are feeding us like McDonald's with, you know, very unhealthy stuff that is causing, and this, in this case, it's not about your body, also it is, but it's about the way we perceive the world. So this technology is kind of defining the way we can react to the poly-crisis that we're facing right now in different contexts, in different places. And the last question I wanted to leave you with, I hope they are not kind of, you know, dystopian. Is this the last question? No, the next slide, please. And since we all talk about AI a lot, when you use AI next time, and I don't want to undermine other negative impacts of AI, the massive use of electricity, you know, they're buying nuclear power, redoing the you know, coal-run power stations and so on, etc. They abusing water sources for cooling data centers. There's a lot of, you know, abused labor involved in cleaning data and so on. I'm not saying those are not the problems. But for me, the biggest problem is that we are now involved in training a very complicated systems for the companies that on one hand offering us, you know, better society, more democratic society, better choices, whatnot. Is usually how technology is being sold, with a little bit of caveat that it may go wrong and so on other way. But at the same time, we're training the systems to be more and more sophisticated. Every single query you do using AI is training the system for free, every single one. Because you're qualifying the pattern you get and make it more looking like intelligent. You are giving the intelligence to the machine that is completely intelligent, if you like, and so forth. So the next slide is the last, I think. I don't want you to be in this position. This dude, we're going back to the first series of slides, was spying on telephones in Stasi. And he's getting the promotion and award, and he gets this, you know, chain with the, this is not fake, this is not AI made. This is from the archive of Stasi here. And he's proud of that. And I just wanted to kind of have this picture as a kind of a memento. Where would we, as society, want to be at the end of this training model? And the next slide is going to give you all the links and all the sources that I have used and so on. And on a positive note, I'm not saying that everything what I said wasn't positive. I think the positive note is like we have to think about all these digital technologies that are being sold to us through the technological PR with much more agency and much more concern that we do, and we shouldn't follow the narratives that are being thrown at us. It's not very complicated, and I think the time to do it is right now. So thank you for coming over at 10 in the morning in Berlin to listen about information sickness. You should be sick from something else, from partying last night and lying in bed right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marek. It was a very enlightening talk. I have to say, I'm using ChatGPT, and I'm rethinking that right now a lot. The tools are out there. You made us aware of how difficult they are, but if we talk about big tech companies and like the sources they give us, how to navigate around that, because it seems very hard to communicate to people to stop using it because it makes their life in a way easier.
Yeah, no, so my work for the last 30 years is exactly focusing on that, because what technology is offering is efficiency, and what we're getting is madness. So when you talk about madness, you are instantly being seen as kind of somebody you're really like out there and don't really understanding what's happening, why people are using it, etc. With big tech, the problem is that an AI in particular, and ChatGPT, that is OpenAI tool, is doing something with the boss, Altman, and so on, that is very important to actually look at. That is, they try to monopolize a specific way of interaction with people, and they're losing billions of money. Like, none of the AI systems is making any money right now. What they're trying to do is to sell it as the most efficient possible tool. And in many contexts, AI as a concept, as a tool to do pattern analysis and then throw you something, is mesmerizing, is amazing. It can write documents, and you can automate this and that. And if you're a professional using these tools in different ways, you can actually get a high quality output much quicker. There's no deny there. They are used because they work for many people. But I just want to bring you something else to answer this question, because you work a lot with journalists, you've been doing the documentary film and so on, and you've been through this narrative before. Many times, we've been told that internet's going to do that, we've been told that mobile phones are going to do that, we've been told that social media is going to do that, all of these sets of tools, but they were much more distributed, much larger kind of number of actors were doing them, that they're going to change society for better. Now AI is doing the same, it's just the difference is there's only 5 or 7 companies that are able to afford the infrastructure required. This system requires, petabytes of data and gigantic data centers, and a lot of people. So we participate in that, and I'm often torn between talking to people about AI and explaining how it works, helping them to use it for the purpose they want to use it, but at the same time making them much more aware about its politics in the long run, because we're running ourselves into another corner. And something that empowering you right now is going to make you completely dependent, and then will disable what you've been building for years, what's happened to newsroom, journalists, you just name it, right?
We just had the other day the conversation about AI in the newsrooms, and we had a colleague from the Reuters Institute, and she was trying to explain certain ways of how it works and how to use it or not use it. For me, in these times, like not being a tech person at all, it seems like that ChatGPT achieved something similar to Google. If we talk about searching online, it's Google, and if we are talking about AI, we are talking about ChatGPT. You mentioned at the very beginning, and I'm always trying to leave people with practical tips. You mentioned at the beginning a server that you would recommend that I honestly have never, you mentioned you did an AI research on ChatGPT on what the information is, and on a second platform. Can you remind us which one that was?
So there are many different AI tools. Many of them manifest themselves as a bot. So it looks like a bot. It's not a bot, really. It's a window to which you can write a query and you get some response. And there are many of them. But the problem with all of them, including the brave one, that they are trained on data that is stolen. All of them. There's not a single AI system that is using internet for training their models that would not steal the data. Or if you don't want to use the word steal, they're using copyrighted materials without consensus and permission, right? Which is stealing by the end of the day. Or they access that Facebook is training data on all the Facebook users, Twitter is on all the tweets of people, and so on, etc. So there's no alternative in that sense. Because the AI that we're currently using, the connection AI, I was talking about 2 types of AI, so symbolic and so on. This is not epistemological AI, knowledge-based AI, and it requires gigantic amounts of data. And whatever the end interface is small and cute and nice, the monster behind it is the same. There are other ways of using AI that you can create smaller models, train them yourself, and then run the AI app, which I'm doing on my laptop, but is a nightmare. Is a nightmare. You really need infrastructure for A, training the models, and B, for light speed processing enormous amounts of data. There's no other way for the magic. No, there's no magic. The magic comes from the scale.
Yeah, because I was fascinated that some newsrooms are trying to train their own AI and others are actually working with big tech companies. And I was like, if we feed in research that we have to get it analyzed, the information is stuck there. We give sensitive data then to big tech companies.
Yes, I mean, that's what's happening, because what people say often to me is like, no, you just throw it into this, neural network, is mash up there, and nobody can read it, it's a black box. I'm like, well, yeah, okay, this is how it is being processed. But your profile, where you log in, when you pay for services, has entire history of the raw data that you put there. If you put your, IP data, intellectual property data, etc., is there. And is there ready for them to analyze because you signed a small print that's what they're going to do. They're going to use it for sharing with third parties or training their models or whatever else and so on.
I mean, we do have those conversations for quite some time, as you said, since the internet is around, basically.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem as if people could process that information, what it means, and it doesn't seem they care. Do you think at the long run we can, it doesn't seem like we can stop it?
No, I mean, listen, I can't predict the future, and I don't want to, and I don't think it's possible. But from history, we know that things don't last forever. And if you see the impact of these things that is happening, I think we are much more disillusioned about the big tech right now, what happened in the US when we show show of faces at certain events and so on, etc. We know what they stand for, and that was hidden before. And I think there's much more kind of realization that those are not, cool guys doing cool things that nobody understands that are going to save the world in the future. And I think that's why the talk is called information sickness, because it is all possible for these entities to act the way they act, because they don't care about truth and values and anything. They care about the moment right now. They want to make money right now, right here, because things are going to collapse, and they don't want to be in the position not being able to afford that collapse, right? And so on. So, but I don't think that's going to last forever, and I think we've seen changes, and I went through changes. I grew up in Poland during the communist times. I didn't believe things were going to change. I think everything was under control, but it completely collapsed. And I think the same is going to happen here.
I thought, like, the other day I read about the big tech guys and their secret hideouts and the bunkers they're buying and building, and it seemed like we are suddenly in a James Bond with lots of these evil geniuses out there. It was...
Yeah, and there's even one of the James Bond films that is talking about the bad guy that is collecting all the data on people and is destroying the world and so on. So even James Bond films, were predicting where we are right now.
I thought it was interesting. The talk is called Information Sickness, and one thing I have witnessed is we are currently living in rather difficult times with lots of things going on at the same time. Yes, a lot of data is thrown at us by big tech and other companies. At the same time, when I think about information sickness, I also think about opening the news and only reading negative things at this time. Isn't there also, as a perspective for documentary filmmakers and journalists, isn't there also a thing that we need to communicate some positive things to? It's not a technical question, but a philosophical more. Yeah. To communicate more positive outcomes so that people start reading again and not just going on ChatGPT, getting their therapy for a cheap amount of money?
This is the usual question I get, and it's a fair question to ask. Why? I mean, why you so negative? I get that. Why you are so whatnot is kind of, in this dark space, putting me there and so on, etc. But I'm like, it's okay. You can have these multiple layers of looking at the world and be happy about something and sad about something at the same time. I think it's too late for telling good stories. I would rather have filmmakers telling proper stories about technology and AI rather than either they are like super negative and dystopian or maximally utopian. There's very little out there that looks at the technology and AI in particular in a realistic way. Most of the writing in the newspaper about AI is written by tech journalists that follow the tech PR. I want cultural journalists, I want journalists writing about politics to gain the knowledge about AI and write about it from this perspective. And people will read it, and I think we're missing more of that. And I think at times of crisis, it is okay to be a bit dark, but what I think we have to work on is how to create trust between us. We cannot, as the director of Signal gave a talk, and she was talking about it's no time now to speak truth to power. That's gone. They don't care. But it's very important that we speak truth between ourselves. And these channels are not enabling that. Let's figure out how to do it so we don't living in the information sickness society.
One last question for you, because I was thinking before that talk, normally if I'm talking about anything, like films pop up in my head, like on every topic basically, but on AI I only can think of iHuman by Tonya Hesse-Shai, but that's a rather old, it's an older film, it was very relevant, and then there was another film where I'm currently missing the title about face recognition, AI and racism. But can you think of any film recommendations to dive deeper in that topic? Is there anything, or books or something that one who would learn
I mean, I would recommend,
could...
this is like kind of nerdy and awkward, but anything that Adam Curtis is doing about these topics, watch it. And if you want to watch fiction, then go for Black Mirror.
Wonderful. 2 fantastic recommendations. Thank you so much for being here that early on a Sunday morning, and thank you for this fantastic talk. Go to the Tactical Tech website, have a look what they are doing. It's an amazing combination of art and tech. I'm a huge fan. Thank you so much.